Muy buenas tardes. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CASA SEAT and to this event. As you know, we have a program of events that normally is more in Spanish or in Catalan. And so time to time it's good also to have an event in English. And today is a very special one because we have the chance to listen to 4 ladies with very senior roles in their respective organization. And the conversation will be led by Claire Salvetti. Welcome, Claire. Welcome to everybody. And also Claire has a very interesting profile, as she used to be also manager in an organization in communication. She had a lot of things, but now he's coach. She is coach, and so he knows very well about what is the point of view of managers, senior managers, particularly when you come to moments of changes like the ones we are living today. So I'm sure it will be a very, very interesting conversation. So I just leave with them. Thank you very much, and please welcome with an applause our guests.
Gracias, Gabriele, por su presentación y por acogernos esta tarde en Casa SEAT. El espacio es espectacular. Nicole y el equipo de 14 le agradecen su atención. Y bienvenidos a todos a la mesa redonda sobre liderazgo en tiempos complejos. Now, sadly, and with many apologies, that is where my Spanish will end. Because although I have a dedicated Spanish teacher, poor man, I'm afraid I don't have enough words to do the whole presentation in Spanish. So I will speak English for you. So thank you, Gabriele, for introducing me this afternoon, and also for hosting us in the amazing Casa SEAT. Nicole and the 14 team are super appreciative partners of your business. And welcome everyone else to the panel discussion about leadership in complex times. It feels a little bit of an understatement to talk about complex times in year 2 of a pandemic, but here we are. So I think we would all agree that we're living in a... Does my microphone keep going off?
Yeah.
I will try and talk loudly just in case it keeps happening. So we are living in a game-changing time, and even without the effects of COVID-19, the ever-increasing complexity of the world is causing unexpected economic, environmental, and social challenges. And of course, when you add to that a cheeky global pandemic, what we're all experiencing can feel a bit more like chaos sometimes, or maybe that's just me. But I think a lot of us feel this chaos in the world. And great leadership will be critical in getting us all through this time so that we emerge out of the other end thriving rather than just limping through as survivors. But what does great leadership look like? How do great leaders act? How do they convince us to follow them? How do they make the smart decisions when they too are eyeballs deep in the same uncertainty and volatility as the rest of us? So complex times brings up many complex questions like these. So what better than bring together 3 awesome leaders who happen to be female, to answer some of these questions right now for us tonight. So I would like to introduce, and I'm very sorry, I'm wearing the same shirt as in my picture, and maybe I shouldn't point that out, but I saw the picture and I thought, they'll think I've only got one shirt, and I kind of have actually, because I'm in a pandemic. Anyway, I'd like to introduce you to these 3 wonderful humans next to me. The first, Sam Rudez, who is the Managing Director of DDB Spain. Welcome,
Hello.
Sam.
Thank you very much. You have 10 shirts like this one, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. That one's green. Yeah, sure. Nicole Taylor, the Chief Executive Officer of 14.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
And Isa Espona, the Executive Creative Director of 14.
Hello, and thank you, Claire.
Lots of power right next to me here. Okay, now I'm going to leave some time at the end for you to ask your own questions. So please have a think of the burning questions that you'd like to ask these humans, and keep them, and we'll ask them at the end. Okay, so now I've got a host of questions that I have been very excited to ask you three. And I'm going to start with an easy one to settle you in. Sam, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you were grown up?
I wanted to be a war journalist.
Oh.
Yeah, and I ended up not being a journalist, but being in the war more or less every day. So, no, I can say that while I was very inclined to creative work, it's something that I really loved from the beginning. I never expected to do what I'm doing now, because I didn't see myself as leading an agency or, but I was sure that I wanted to do something creative. So, yeah, I think that I paid some, I would say, some homage of what I wanted to do when I was a kid. So I'm happy of what I'm doing and not being a war journalist.
Awesome. Nick?
Mine changed depending on what age I was at. But I always imagined running a company, so that part is true of me. But I did go through a phase, and a fairly long phase, because I started a degree in it, and it was environmental science. So I wanted to be a scientist. I was very much a maths, science brain, so creativity wasn't really a thing for me. I could admire it and certainly appreciate it, but I didn't feel that I had that kind of capability. But I loved the idea of saving the oceans and the forests. So here I am in advertising. But equally, in its best form, I think you absolutely get the chance to change the world or have an impact on the big issues. So that might still be available to me. You never know.
And Isa?
I want to be in something that it has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. I want to be a doctor when I was a kid. But it's true that my father always told me that I just ask for the advertising moments in the films instead of looking the films. Then I think something in my blood it was going on there. But
Awesome. War journalist, environmental scientist, and a doctor. Excellent.
Running advertising agencies.
What a round table.
They're the people to have in the lifeboat, I think. I'm going to next go on to quite a heavy question. Nicole, starting with you.
Okay.
What is great leadership to you?
Okay, I've tried to kind of put this in simple words because it's a lot of things, I think. But when I was trying to imagine when I feel like I've had a great boss and how I felt as a result of that great boss, and it feels like I can do and be more than I thought myself. So they kind of make you feel more capable. There's a great sense of belief, and you kind of doing things way out of your comfort zone. So that's what it feels like for me. And I was fortunate enough to have two female bosses who brought that kind of experience to me. So that's how I'd answer that question. They put me in the deep end many times as well, which scared me. But they thought I could do it. And sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. I think I failed a couple of times, but that was the experience.
And Sam, what is great leadership to you?
I think great leadership is serving. I think that to lead, you need to be, I would say, oriented to serve the others, because I think that you have to take decisions that many times don't help yourself, but help the others. So you have to put the others in the first place. You have to be very oriented on being helpful, because many times when you're leading, many interactions are problems, no? Because people come to you to solve problems, and that's what they expect. So I think that we really need to be very focused on helping when these situations come out, and to be ready, not to be first overwhelmed by them, and second, always ready to help no matter what they ask you. Because I think that this leads to the second aspect of leading, which is trust. I think that when your team comes with a problem, they need to find someone who really trusts them to solve it, and because they come to you because they are looking for support. So I think that this serving attitude and this trust are the key elements of great leadership.
And just on that, if leadership is about serving and supporting people in a pandemic, when suddenly there are so many more problems, how do you know who to help first?
Yeah, well, it's so hard, no? Because it's. I think that when everything started, and I'm sure that you girls thought the same more or less, we were absolutely overwhelmed, and it was impossible to attend all the requests and all the problems that were coming out. I think that we need to allow a little bit of, I would say something like, to be relaxed about being wrong sometimes on what we prioritize on a moment like that, because it's so easy to be wrong, no? And I think that this kind of humility to be wrong, to say, I didn't take the best decision, I was wrong with this. I think it has been very important during this pandemic, and also to prioritize sometimes things that were not so prioritary. Because I think that probably what was most important, and now we start to understand what happened on the first months of the lockdown and so on, the pandemic. I think that every decision that put people in the center or that involved people directly, maybe decisions that, instead of business were prioritizing people, were the most important ones, no? We were probably very much in a hurry to solve business issues because it was very critical what was going on. But when I look back, I realized that those decisions that affected people were the ones that were the most important on that moment.
Isa, what have you learnt about yourself as a leader in the past year?
Well, I think one of the most important things is what Sam was saying. It was learn to listen to people and to be conscious that everyone has different issues or concerns, and that you need to be flexible and open-minded enough to really listen them and understand them to really give a solution, that it's not one correct answer, that it's a multiple ways to give them different directions to really solve the problems. And I think it's essential to put the people first and really make them feel that you are listening them and trusting them.
Mm-hmm. And I can imagine if you're doing a lot of listening, sometimes there are people who have bigger voices. And so you listen to them first. And then the people with the smaller voices, maybe you don't hear them as much. So how do you manage the big voices with the smaller voices? Any of you, as an answer?
I think you need to, at some point, do a step back and take kind of time to really think about all the different inputs that are going on and the different comments that the people are giving you, and maybe to be a little bit more reflective and less reactive, to really be conscious on the things that are happening around, to be fair in...
I'm thinking of a great initiative that Julie and her team did. There you go, Jules. Shout out.
Wave your hand, Jules.
Wave your hand. Like an anonymous kind of suggestion box, right? So that's a good way of making sure that all voices are heard, because you're right, some people are a lot more confident around expressing what's going well or not well for them, and some aren't for lots of reasons. So I thought that was a great initiative, and I know that you take it seriously, and you respond to all those requests and thoughts, and I thought that could be a great initiative that could work more broadly. I know we do surveys, Sylvia, more broadly anyway, but I love the regular nature of that one. Was it every week? Every month. It's great.
Yeah, something that helped us very much at the DB when the lockdown started, what we did is that in order to ensure that we could hear everybody's voice, we started to have daily, it was daily at the beginning, then we moved into twice a week, daily meetings with the middle management, with all creative directors, all account directors, and just to hear, just to put just to listen to people, just to share our worries, just to share our views. Sometimes we were covering operative things, like, to more or less have a notion about what was going on in the agency. And on the other side, also trying to share all the worries, all the comments of our teams. We still do these meetings. We do it twice a week. On Mondays, it's more concentrated on operational. And on Fridays, what we do is we do an aperitivo all together. It's a virtual one. But it's helpful to bring on topics like, from our teams, thoughts about how do we have to work onwards, like with the new situation, how we have to hybrid spaces like home, office, how are the feelings of our teams. So, and I think that's great, to also to try to share the responsibility with others in the team. It's a great way to lead in these times, because you cannot do everything by yourself.
Yeah.
They say that there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together with other people. So, and I think that more than ever, this is a huge truth.
Great point. And Sam, earlier you mentioned trust.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, very important. It's very important for leadership. So as a leader, what do you focus on first? Earning people's trust, or does trust come from having a belief in the people first?
Well, I think that you need to believe in your people. Otherwise, it's impossible. Otherwise, you cannot lead them, because you're trying to detect things and you're not relaxed. And to be a good leader, you need to be relaxed. And I think that it's something that when you trust your people, when you trust your team, it comes out naturally. It's something that they need to trust you, you need to trust them. So it's like something that retrofits itself. So I really think that it's something that happens naturally, and that it's also about authenticity, and like being yourself. I think that your teams, when you're trying to play a role of being someone who you're not, they detect it, they see it, and they don't trust you. So I think that this natural trust comes out of like being yourself, trusting them, and also being always there to help.
Great. And Nick, how do you earn the trust of people that you're leading?
I think it was a really interesting question, because there's a kind of right answer, but I looked back and I thought, my God, the amount of times I've approached jobs and positions where I've felt like I've had to earn that position, that I didn't have a right to that position, and felt harshly kind of judged in the process. So I would typically approach a new job as trying to earn my right, my kind of position to be there. And that might have been the context of the environments that I was in, the kind of time that I was growing my career, and the expectations of women in certain jobs, possibly, my chip on my shoulder as a woman in that position. But without doubt, one of the biggest lessons of even coming to a new country and leading people is, listen more, but equally start from a spot of absolute belief, because that will create a different kind of exchange. And that's a two-way street, right? It's hard to kind of walk in and not feel some kind of level of judgment or kind of questions being asked of both sides. But I think, if I could have my time again on some occasions, I definitely would have started there, because I think it would have got a better outcome. But it was more or less the way I'd been brought up, I think, in always needing to prove myself. So it was a behaviour that I'd learnt, as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. I think that, and it's very much on what you were saying, no? I think that transparency also is very important, no? When you feel overwhelmed, or when you feel confused, and when you don't know what to do, I think you need to share it with your team.
Yeah.
Because I think that they trust you even more, because hey guys, we're human. Sometimes we're wrong, sometimes we hesitate, sometimes we have problems, sometimes we are angry because of, I don't know what, something happened, And I think that being transparent, of course, not sharing everything that happens and that kind of things, no. But I think that it's good to share sometimes that you're not sure or you have a problem with something. And I think that this transparency of like showing things like naturally helps very much your teams in order to understand your position, your way of thinking, and to be perceived as when you're asking for something, to be trusted, to be believed. Because I think that's it's a natural way to relate to people. No, it's like friendship, no. If you keep on hiding things to your friends, they don't become your friends. So they just doubt about you and so on. So I think it's the same.
And it's also a way that you will receive the same thing from them. I mean, if you are open and sharing with them what you think, at the end, it's something that you get back also, and it's the way to really find a good balance to really work together.
You've already mentioned some really big words or ideas like listening, believing, authenticity, transparency, being open, great communication, all really important things for leadership. Given the three of you have achieved a lot in your careers, and I'm sure we haven't seen the half of it yet, what advice do you have for other women who are aiming to be in a leadership position one day? Who'd like to start? Nick? You start, Nick.
Be yourself. I think Sam touched on it. It's something that you hear a lot, and it's hard to do. But I think that's your superpower. Own your story. Don't try and be something you're not. Of course, do the work. Be as good as you can be at the craft, at the kind of business, for sure. But I think when you turn up and show your true self, that is literally when my career took off. It was absolutely aligned with that moment when I stopped not in pretending, just kind of going along with some of the stereotypes and expectations that existed, particularly in advertising, which was fairly Mad Men-esque back in my day. But I think when I started to speak up, when I started to express my true self, when I started to tell my story as a, Aussie girl from countryside, humble beginnings, imperfect, didn't get things right always, things started to click. People started to connect.
Yeah.
And I could see how much it mattered in the eyes of the younger generations. I could see that resonated with them and mattered to them. And I was like, wow, if that's my gift in this job, to show them that being yourself matters, that it's your superpower. And I never thought my story was that special. I just knew that I was a hard-working, determined person more than anything. I felt really, really proud of that. And like I said, that's when my career kind of took on a whole other kind of level. It was about authenticity. That would be my biggest lesson to share with everyone. It really is, like I said.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And also, if you are passionate about what you are doing, at the end you transmit this also, that you need to believe also in what you are doing and be passionate. And I think then it's everything kind of more smooth.
Yeah, I have two. First one is, first one is that you don't have to limit yourself. That's the first thing, no? That sometimes we as women, and maybe more in our generation, not in the younger ones, you feel that you have limits because you haven't had like a woman boss, for instance. Me, never in my life. So you feel that maybe you cannot reach those positions. Not anymore. But sometimes we see, that some people still think that they have to choose between their career and their family and so on. So don't put limits to yourself. That would be my first advice. And the second one is, I think it's something that it's very related to the Latin culture, sometimes we don't live very well with our ambition. Being ambitious in our culture, it's not very positively seen. No, it's kind of, yeah, you're too ambitious. No, and I think that it's good being ambitious. Of course, if you respect the rules, if you play, I would say, in a good way, it's good because you achieve great things. So I think that I was listening to Edurne Pasaban, which is she's an alpinist. She did all the 8,000s of the wall, and she gave us this speech at DDB, and she was talking about ambition and how good was ambition to achieve your goals. And she really made me to think, no, that I've always been an ambitious person, and of course, I have my limits, but I always lived not very well with that because I felt, well, maybe this is being too ambitious and so on. I think it's very Latin, no? In our culture, we don't live as well with this aspect as the Anglo-Saxons. But I think that ambition is a wonderful motor, and I think that if you play it with the good rules, I think it's great. So don't feel ashamed about being ambitious. That would be my second advice.
Awesome. And I think self-confidence is the number one thing you need to achieve goals, which kind of ties in with ambition, knowing you can do it.
Indeed, yes. I think that sometimes and probably maybe this is more in female leadership, no, that we keep on asking ourselves if we are doing things well. And I think that maybe, I don't know if men do it all the time, but we do it all the time.
We should get a man to come up here and tell us.
Anyone to share it? But I think that we tend to ask ourselves if we're doing things well. I think it's good because it's, as leaders and as managers, we need to get feedback, of course. But sometimes let's stop of asking ourselves if we do it well or we do it bad, and let's ask the others, because we need to listen to them and we need their feedback. So, but I think a part of self-confidence is very important, because if you start something with, not the strength, many questions, sometimes it doesn't happen, no? Because you bomb yourself with questions, with doubts, and so on. So you need a step of self-confidence always to do whatever you want to do.
Awesome. Isa, in your experience as a leader, when has being female been an advantage, and when has it been a disadvantage?
I think now, in the situation that the world are, it's an advantage to being a female leader, because it's starting to put it more upfront to the people, to really push more the women in this position. And I think it's something that I have to thanks to be in this moment, on this time, and being a young woman. That it's I think it's a good thing, but it's true that in other situations you still felt this men positioning in an automotive industry, for example, where the men has a big role, and in a room where I'm like tiny and young and a woman, sometimes I feel that if there's a man that it goes with me, even if they don't know who is leading the thing, they direct more to a man rather than me. It's like, hey, that it's something that still happens. That for sure, I hope that it will change, but it's a truth. But I'm happy that now I think that there's a lot of push on women to be more visible.
For sure. As an older person, what did it feel like? You worked harder than a lot of my peers, for sure. And it took longer. And, it always felt like you were fighting. You put your gloves on before work every morning because you had to kind of bust through. You had to earn or push to get a seat at the table. That's what it felt like. And I think I'm super grateful. You can feel there's just a little bit of wind at the back of women. And some of it's for, ticking boxes and PR. I don't care. I think it's good for society. We've all seen the data that more women in leadership positions creates, more healthy businesses and more profit. So I think all of us can benefit from more women in these jobs. So I think it's a good thing, but I think it equally comes with some tension. I think it creates some level of fear too. People get worried about their own futures as a consequence. So it's not as simple as advantage or disadvantage either. But I'm glad it's the consciousness of women in senior positions is way up there, and people are genuinely supporting it because they know it's morally and ethically right, but equally great for business.
And I think we need to talk about leadership as a person without thinking if it's a man or a woman. It's like about the skills that this person, whatever gender it is, has.
Yeah. No, I agree with Nick and Isa that we're living a good moment for female leadership because at least there is a conversation. We're part of it. So, but we still have to. I think we still have to break lots of barriers.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the typical big conversations, but we still get to meetings that we are the only woman. No, it happens.
Sure.
No, like 6 men and you're the only woman. I think it's something that's going to change for sure in the coming generations, and that it's still changing. But I would say that I would like to put the attention on the little details. No, as Isa was saying, no, that when you go into a meeting and you're with a male peer and they ask him, or maybe. I don't know, it's like in daily things, no? Like you order wine and then they serve the wine to your peer and they ask, what wine are you going to have? No, it's she's choosing the wine, no? Like, I think it's not only happening in leadership, we live in a society that has been this way for many years. Of course, I'm positive because things are changing, but we still have a long way to go.
I can give you a perspective as an outsider. Spain is a lot more respectful to me as a woman in my position than Australia.
Oh, really?
Naturally.
That's surprising.
As an experience.
There's a headline.
I think it's the first time. I think it's the first time apart football that we win in something.
No, it's been a much for me.
That makes me very.
And
happy.
I lived and worked in Australia for a long time, and seeing Australia from the outside, it's horrible. From a kind of, other than the beautiful beaches and everything else, from a business workplace perspective and the misogynistic patriarchal system that it's built on, this feels more gentle for sure, more inclusive for sure, and still work to be done. But just as a woman coming in as a CEO, walking into these meetings with very senior men, being the only woman in the room.
Yeah, well, we're in Barcelona, and I think Barcelona is very special on that. I would to highlight that point, that maybe not all Spain is the same, but I think that we live in a very cosmopolitan city. We're very lucky, guys. Yeah. And I think that we're the city is very open-minded.
Yeah, it is.
And I think that probably not only in the way we live and the way that people are here and so on, and people are perceived. I think that also these kind of things, in Barcelona, which is a super open environment, maybe it's easier and maybe it's more comfortable. So
certainly that's been my experience. And Australia's in the news at the moment. It's politics, its behaviours are pretty appalling around the workplace. There's plenty of good blokes in Australia who treat
so what do you think?
Who treat women well. But I think as a workplace, it's
that's great.
It's been challenging. So there you go. There's a bit of insight.
Surprising.
Yeah.
Good to hear now that we're in Spain, right? So we talked a little bit at the beginning about this last year has been, the famous word is unprecedented, the most overused word in 2020. Sam, what would you say has been your biggest challenge over the last year, and how have you overcome it?
Oof, that's hard. Well, we were discussing about that with Marta and Patricia and so on. I think, of course, we have had many challenges with managing people, helping people, prioritizing, trying not to depress, not to be depressed, because we needed to have our best humor, and to be supportive and so on. I was, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was writing a daily email to all DDB, which was called Buenos Dias. Then it was the first month, no? And when I saw that the lockdown was still going on and that there was a long time to come, I decided to pass the word. And every day someone is writing this email of Buenos Dias, but I felt it was kind of therapeutic, like, you know, a way to share feelings, to be emotional. I would say that that has been very helpful, no? To show your emotions and to, you know, and to share that sometimes you were worried, you were, I would say, just tired, or maybe you were overwhelmed by something. That was, but probably the most challenging thing, I think it has depended a little bit on the phase that we have been. I would say that now I'm dealing with this, and it's weird, and again, I'll share it, I'll disclose it. I'm dealing with this kind of frustration of, you know, I have nothing to complain. You know, like, I have work, good work, happy, leading a great company that is doing very well, having good results. My family is fine, and we are all healthy, but I have things to complain because I cannot hug my friends. I cannot hug my mom being like relaxed. I cannot go out for dinner with my friends. I cannot travel. So I decided to allow myself to be angry sometimes, no? So, and I think that that's something that it's challenging at this point, no? We're all exhausted, we're all tired, and accepting your feelings, I think it's very good. And I think it helps a lot. And let them flow naturally, no? Now I'm angry. Of course, I cannot be like angry with everybody, with my coworkers, like, ah! But of course, you know, when you have these feelings, you need to naturalize them. You need to share them, to say, yeah, well, I have nothing to complain, but I want to complain. So I think it's good to accept it and to try to lead it or to manage it in the best way, because that's a way to you know, to be relaxed about that.
On that note, actually, there's a psychologist called Susan David, and she's come up with a term called toxic positivity. You heard it?
Yeah.
And it's all about when people are always trying to find the silver lining, the positive, and it squashes down people's feelings. And people do it because they don't like the discomfort of sitting in a bad mood or, you know, something negative. But sometimes that's what you need to do, because we're all grieving.
Absolutely. Yeah, this kind of Mr. Wonderful feeling, no? That everything is so fine and so cool. No, everything is crap. So you have the right to say it sometimes, no? And some days you just say, okay, of course you need to keep with your team, but sometimes you have. I think it's good to share. Hey, today is not my best day. No problem. If it's not every day, of course.
So that's a great, I mean, thank you, Sam. That's great context for how a lot of people are feeling at the moment. So Nick, in that context, what are you focusing on as a leader at the moment?
What am I focusing on? Yeah, a lot of things. But I think similar to Sam, in the realization that I wasn't okay. You know, like, I'd like to think I'm someone who can bounce back pretty easily and face into some pretty hard things and keep a fairly, you know, positive kind of outlook no matter what. But I realised that the tank was so low. It was a new experience for me. So I think the first thing that I thought I needed to focus on was make sure that I was okay. So what does that mean? Kind of moments that aren't always in the office, you know, walk, simple things, to help make sure that I'm not, my frustration levels aren't too extreme, that I'm, you know, yes, owning it, but equally managing it, because that can kind of get a bit out of control. But I think it was that realization that, yes, a lot of other people need support, and I've got to make sure I can provide that. But what about how do I kind of get myself in the right frame of mind with the right energy and attitude? Because that's an infectious thing, and there's no point in pretending that you're happy, because that's not the truth. But equally, you know, kind of going down that hole into full negativity is not helpful either. So definitely focus on making sure my well-being's, you know, cared for and nurtured. And then making sure, we're having the tough conversations and the right dialogue with the team and giving the team more space. You know, I think you called it out in something that you did, Claire, but it's, you know, when the shit's going down, you know, the temptation to kind of run in and save the day because, you know, you go, I'm the person whose job it is to sort stuff out. And I feel incredibly responsible for that. So in a crisis, you're kind of running out in front to kind of do as much saving and as much problem solving as possible. But I think the other realization of leading now is create more space, see what happens. You know, it's good things have happened. So more of that, which means earlier to bed for me, which means, you know, better eating and lifestyle habits. But I think it's just managing that kind of temptation to put everything on your own shoulders because you think that you should.
That's very important, Nick.
Yeah.
And I think that we sometimes you need to switch off.
Yeah.
And you need to relax, you need to rest, and you need to switch off your phone. Because sometimes you're that much in the limit that if someone calls at that moment, you know what's going to happen. So I think it's good to, you know, as managers of a big company and so on, we also give ourselves some time to rest.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Rest
to
is important.
have, you know, have fun with friends and to forget the phone.
To really,
Phone's a good symbol.
To really disconnect.
Sí, sí.
Lisa?
To
Patada
get
y-
recharged.
Yeah, you need to do it because otherwise you won't be at your best self when the big problem comes, no?
Yeah.
Sometimes we lose out of time like solving little things that, of course, they need attention and you need to solve them, but you're so obsessed that you keep on like working 24/7. And then at that moment of the 24/7 plus 1 minute when the big shitstorm, comes out, you're so exhausted. So you need to keep always a little of your batteries for the big problems.
Like a pandemic.
And Issa, so you're a leader of creatives, and creative is all about ideas and starting from nothing and having something. And for me, as not a creative, that feels super stressful. So how do you manage ensuring that your teams are always able to deliver on the creative when the conditions around you sometimes can go against you doing that?
Well, sometimes
Do you need a drink?
Whiskey, maybe.
I think, I mean, it's not easy at all for any creative and not creatives, but I think you really need to empathize with the people to really understand that it's in these times during the pandemic, it was even harder that when you had a bad day, even it was a worse day than a normal bad day in a normal life. And you really need to empathize to give them maybe sometimes more space that they feel that they can recharge, even if it's for some short time, being more conscious about the situation, and really also find a balance or working really as a team, and also finding moments not just to talk about work, also talk about random daily things that it also when it was more in everything on a distance, that it was not like just calls for work. It's also finding some moments to really connect with the people, to talk about other things, to feel that you have a kind of a more normal life, to then have other perspective. And I think it's really, really important to work as a team, and more than ever, and trusting well, it's something that we already talk about, but trust to the people and give them the space and the opportunity.
Thank you, Isa. So Nick, I know that in the last year you have sought out new avenues for ways to find positivity and stay confident. Would you like to talk about a couple of things that you've done proactively to help you in those spaces?
I'm going to go all yogi on you. I mean, in some ways, they're kind of basic things, but you can overlook them. And I was lucky enough as well to work with a company called the Positive Pioneers from the Positive Group, which was a committee of people around the world working with this company that were literally workshopping techniques to create positivity in the workplace, knowing that we're in a context of a pandemic and it was highly stressful. And the only tool available to you in high stress is how you respond. The stress itself isn't the problem. The response to the stress is. So they teach you that really clearly. Stress is a thing. It exists. It will always exist. Your response is the power. So simple things like, and I do this now, I think Ant's seen me in a meeting. I bring in a photo of my daughter, who's 4, and she's really cute. So there's no bad photos of her. And I put it on my desk, and it triggers in your brain positive associations and things, right? That's how the brain works. Like all of a sudden it just puts me in a good mood. I've taken it to really big meetings, pitch meetings. I've sat her there to put me in the right frame of mind. These things work. That's how our brain's kind of wired. Music, play some music, get yourself in a good space. But things like breaks during the day, going for a walk, especially when you're really busy and feeling frazzled, like in that moment, it's almost a trigger to go, I'm leaving the office and I'm going for a walk for 20 minutes. And by the time you come back, you're in a great frame of mind. So simple things like that, practical things. Then I guess bigger ticket items, diet. I was getting into some bad habits in the pandemic. I became a smoker.
Really?
Hadn't done much smoking in Australia before, but in Spain, I was out in the street smoking quite often. I was just eating way too much bread. Things that just don't make me feel good, right? So sorted most of that out, the smoking included. I do a lot of meditation, which is a learned practice, and it's if someone told me 5 years ago that I would learn meditation and do that regularly, I would probably think that was really uncool and not my style. But I love it. It's probably the most transformative thing that I do. And it's really easy, and it's joyful to do, and it really just helps you kind of moderate yourself. What did my teacher call it? He said it's like putting suspension, like a good suspension on your life. So you're not hitting things hard, you're kind of just bouncing off more gently. So I love that. I do that daily. And then I have a great coach, not Claire. But I do have a coach, and it helps me. There's someone I can go to who's really independent and objective around what's going on in my world, and can offer me some guidance through that, and it really helps. It's a major support thing to help kind of manage myself and stay in the good zone.
Awesome. Sam, you founded stayhuman during the pandemic, which was all about asking corporate leaders to not leave behind humanity. Would you tell us a bit about it and what you've learned?
Well, stayhuman is it's a movement that urges leaders, C-level leaders, to not to forget the human side of brands and the human side of companies that we saw in the first phase of the lockdown. It's a collective movement founded by DDB, founded by Llorente y Cuenca, which is a public affairs company, and founded by Picnic, which is a strategic company from Madrid. I think that the fact that 3 different companies that can be competing in some jobs and so on, some works. I think that that makes it very, very special because we really believe in the power of collaboration. And we think that the new era is asking for that, more collaboration, less competition. We could be competing in, I don't know, pitches and for strategy business and stuff like that. But instead of like crazily competing that we do in some works, we decided to put our forces together in order to send this message to the not only the industry, because the idea is to go beyond the wall of marketing, of course, and to urge leadership of big companies, no, in order to make people think about and also to act. We're not giving formulas, because we're not this way, and we're nobody to say you're doing right or you're doing wrong. But what we do is that we also give, I would say, ways of asking yourself if you're putting people in the center of your decisions. We're also collaborating with La Fundación Más Humano, which is a foundation that works in all the human resources part of humanity, companies, and so on. So they are putting this knowledge also to the equation. And I think it's been an adventure because it has given us the chance to interview a lot of people, to talk with many company and marketing leaders about, what we had to do as a society in order to, to come out of this pandemic in a better way, no? Not to forget everything that we learned during that first phase, during that moment of kind of collective euphoria of helping each other, not to leave it behind and to put it in practice also for the next stages, no? There is a very high commercial pressure. Everybody's like in the run of, recovering the losses of last year. So everybody's rushing to get good numbers. But okay, that's important, and we understand that the P&Ls are crucial. But of course, don't put that in front of your decisions and think about people. No? Don't forget that. And I think it's been a journey, and we have more activities planned for the coming months, and hopefully it's a movement that will see more people joining, and that will get I would say, a bigger conversation.
Awesome. Really cool. That is good use of leadership.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, we've got about 5 minutes left, so rather than me continue to ask all my questions, does anybody have a question in the audience that they would like to ask our panel? I'm sure someone can think of something really good.
Julie. Maria.
How do you cope with failure?
What's failure? Well, I think that.
Did everyone hear the question? How do you cope with failure?
I think failure is part of life, and sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. No, so I think that it's something that you need to accept, especially in times as the times we're living. No, that the uncertainty is so high, and the probabilities of failing are big because everything is so unprecedented, as Claire was saying, that you have the right to fail. And I think that when you take decisions and when you're deciding lots of things, you need to be wrong sometimes. So that's failing naturally. And as I think it was Mark Zuckerberg that was saying, go fast, break things, no? Okay, so we need to break things sometimes, no? Of course, we need to pay attention not breaking people's things, because that's the most important. But I think failing is part of life.
Yeah, at the end, we are humans, no?
Exactly.
And I think we need to take the failure as a learning rather than a negative thing. It's what we can take from this
still hurts a
failure
bit.
and bring it to something positive. That there are always things to learn.
For sure. I think, the learning is the most significant kind of, thing as a result. But, I think we've celebrated a few fails at our place recently because we did our best. Because we did our best, and that matters. But equally, it's a definition that possibly doesn't exist in its previous meaning.
I watched a really good video earlier on LinkedIn, and it was, I can't remember her name, I'm sorry, but she was a billionaire. And she was saying that when she was a child, her dad used to encourage her to fail every day. And so when she came home from school, he would say, "Where did you fail today?" And she would say, "I failed here, it was rubbish." And her dad would be like, "Awesome." And so then
That's good.
she associated not succeeding with the success. So it
Cool.
was completely, and that's, I think, probably why she's a billionaire, because
Yeah,
she
yeah,
learned that that's
yeah.
part of life, which I thought
Bounce
was
around.
quite smart. Dad, I thought I was making notes. I'll be trying that one tomorrow. I need a billionaire in my life. Who's got another question? Oh, Julie. Hi.
You mentioned transparency earlier and honesty, and if you're scared or you don't know the answer. Would you, so for me, I have quite junior members of the team as well as other senior members. Would you tailor that or just be honest for all of them? Because sometimes I worry that I need to add more strength to the junior members, and I just have no approach.
Wow.
So transparency for
I think
it's a
everyone.
judgment call.
I was thinking about a Spanish play on words. I'll try to translate it into English, which is not easy. Something is sincerity, and the other one is sincericidio, which is like, killing yourself with sincerity. I think that you need to always to be honest and to explain the truth. Of course, you can be probably more direct with the truths with your senior members because they understand better. And I think that they are more used to get some kind of news. And I wouldn't say that you should disguise the news or lie to the junior people. But of course, you need to, maybe the angle of explaining things needs to be a little different because the person you are talking to, they're going to get the message in a different way, no? If sometimes things get very dramatic if you explain them like in a very, open way. But I think that you can be honest and you can explain the truth, maybe without being, I would say, very much rich in details. But I think the message is the same in the end. So I think transparency is always pays back, no? That, with this difference of sinceridad and sincericidio, which is important.
Agree.
Well, that seems like a very sensible place to end. Wow. 3 amazing humans had some incredible insights today. I can't possibly do you justice in a recap, but what I heard was the essential ingredients for great leadership in complex times, or any time really, is great communication, believing in your people, being authentic, being wholeheartedly yourself, not limiting yourself, and collaborating, as well as all the other amazing things you said. So on behalf of the audience and myself, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us, Sam, Nick, and Isa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So actually, as a man, after listening to 4 brilliant and charming ladies, the temptation will be to say thanks and bye-bye. But I think it will be a missed opportunity because, as you can imagine, every event in CASA SEAT, when there are people, is unique, but some of them are really special. And I think it is one of these very special events. And I want to thank all of you for the hints, for the advices, but most of all for the humanity that you share openly. And particularly to Claire, she was really brilliant in dealing with the lady with this standing. So I think it was really a pleasure to me. I hope it was enjoyable for you, and I guess it was also very interesting in terms of content. So thank you very much for being with us, and I hope to see you soon. And the same for you, of course. It will be a pleasure to welcome you back in CASA SEAT. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
who organised this together with the team at CASA SEAT. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And all the people. All the guys. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good night, everybody.